Hello and welcome to the Business Spotlight interview series. I'm your host, Barrett McDonald, and I'm joined today by Nic Stana, founder of Grandway Marketing. Nick, thank you so much for joining us today. Would you like to kick things off with a brief background as to who you are and what your company does?
Sure. Thank you for having me, Barrett. And my name is Nic Stana, founder and owner of Grandway Marketing, digital marketing agency established in 2017, based out of Halifax. And we've worked with well over 100 clients across various industries, to name a few: construction, industrial, a few restaurants, and more, to help them succeed online through web design, through SEO, and other digital marketing services.
Yeah, absolutely, Nick. It sounds like a fun way. There's been marketing has been forefront of a lot of businesses recently, especially through this interview series around North America. So it's definitely an industry that a lot of people are realizing is more than just putting an ad in a newspaper. So it's a good way to go. So being a business owner, things get a little hectic. So how do you balance your personal life with the demands of running a business?
That's a tough one. Um, and it changes, right? So the way I like to think about it, and I may be a little different in this sense that I don't have as many hobbies, or I don't have that many hobbies. Business is my hobby. But then um, there's seasons. I would say there's seasons and there's times where you have to go all in on the business, and you kind of have to put your personal things aside, spend a little less time with family. And there's times when business slows down. So instead of getting upset about that, you can take a breather and enjoy some of that family time. And at the same time, I work from home, so I get to see my family all the time, and
Right.
that's really a blessing. I mean, there's people that have regular jobs that make less than a business owner would, and they don't get to see their family. So really, sometimes it's hard to cross that balance, but it's truly a blessing to be able to really be around with your family every day and do the job you love. So I would say there's no work-life balance, but the way it works out, I'm happy with the way it works out.
That's awesome. That's good to hear, Nick. So what would you say have been your biggest learnings as an employer since you began in business?
As an employer,
Yeah.
I would say learning what to look for in people, creating processes and systems. Actually, I can't drive that point enough. Processes and systems really make it easier to be an employer and bring other people on and delegate tasks. Without processes and systems, it kind of falls apart because you can't hire people and expect them to have a process and come into your company with a process. So I would say that's probably my biggest lesson I've learned, is to create processes and SOPs, and kind of have a structure, so when we bring people on, they can go with something that we already have in written form or video, or they know what we're doing.
Absolutely. So touching on hiring, what qualities do you look for in employees and how do you foster a positive and productive work environment?
It's a great question. So the main thing I look for in employees now, besides the skill, so obviously there has to be a level of skill,
Mhm.
but I would say integrity is the biggest one, because we are in the digital marketing industry, and they see certain conversations, they have certain passwords, you know what I mean? Like, they have access to a few things where you have to be able to trust them. So they have to be a person of integrity, so you can be able to trust them with this information. And just overall, for example, even if you have a sales position, you want them to be able to sell with integrity rather than just to push products.
Right. Yeah.
And then even when they do the work, you want them to follow the process and do the work at the standard that we set, rather than cut corners and rush things. So integrity, I would say, is the number one thing, and it's one of those things you can't train integrity. People either work with integrity or they don't.
Absolutely. So you
You don't.
mentioned that you're working from home. Does everyone in your company work from home?
Yeah, it's all remote.
And what do you guys get together once in a while to kind of have a team building exercise or anything like that?
Yeah, so we try to do it at least once a week, but I would say
Okay,
we talk amongst each other every single day.
that's good.
And we could do more on that front, especially as we grow. There would be more set times where we kind of have breakup conversations that are a little outside of work, just to build that, just to build that rapport. But where we're such a small team, we kind of build that rapport through our daily conversations, anyways.
Right. Yeah, which is good. So what would you say are some common misconceptions about running a business, and how do you address them yourself?
That it's easy, and that it's, I mean, there's a lot of misconceptions. People think you go in business and on month three you're making 100 grand. On year one you're doing $1 million, right? And
Right.
it's really not like that. It's really it's like kicking water up a hill for the first little while, depending on how many connections you have and what your network is, and a few other variables. But I would say generally it's going to be an uphill battle at first, and then even as you grow bigger, it's always going to be an uphill battle. It's just going to get a little bit easier, and people don't really get how hard it is at first. And you just have to have that grit, that determination to keep it going when you're doubting everything you're doing, right? You don't get the validation. There's a delay between the work you're putting in business and the rewards, right?
Right.
Especially when it comes to material rewards. Like, it took me 2 3 years to really start feeling rewarded. Like, okay, this is starting to really pay off. I'm really confident what we're doing here. I believe in it long term. So I
Absolutely.
would
Yeah,
say,
it can take some time.
yeah. So I would say that's probably the misconception. People don't really, that they misunderstand exactly how much work it takes at first, and how much determination and drive you have to have in order to succeed. After a couple of years, it becomes a bit easier.
Right, absolutely, and especially it's more apparent in this day and age where we have so many things at our fingertips instantaneously that a lot of people forget that some good things take time, and it's about staying the course and keeping moving in that direction. So what do you attribute
Absolutely.
your growth to?
What do I attribute my growth to? So I would say it depends on which stage we're talking about. So different stages of growth require different attributes.
Okay.
So I'd say first of all, you need good sales skills, right? Just to get your foot in the door in business, you need, it depends in the industry, I guess, but in my industry specifically, I needed to have good sales skills. And for the first couple of years of the business, it was kind of part-time and I didn't have the sales skills. So the growth
Right.
was slow. And then in about 2019, actually before 2019, I took a sales job for a brief period of time to kind of learn how a sales organization works. And once I was able to translate those skills to Grandway, that's what happened. That's what drove that initial growth. Then I'll go back to my initial point of integrity. So I always sold with integrity. If it doesn't match, if sorry about that. So if your requirements and your budget and everything else doesn't match with the product that we're selling, and we can't make it work, then I won't sell it. So integrity is another thing. You have to sell with integrity. But then it's about once you start growing, sales can only get you so far as a one-man operation, right? So then
Right.
you have to have systems and processes and hiring skills. So at different stages of the business, you have to have different attributes that are going to help you grow to the next level.
Yeah, absolutely. And those are all that's just the short list of all the different skills I'm sure you're employing right now to attribute to your growth. There's all kinds of things that go
Oh
towards
yeah,
it.
definitely. I would say it starts off with sales, and then obviously the fulfillment. Whatever service or whatever product you have has to be on point. Like, that's I I kind of don't even mention that part, because to me that's just common sense. Your product should be the
Right.
best, or it should be very competitive. It should be so competitive that you can say it's the best. So that's
Absolutely.
that's number one, and then you have to be able to sell it. You have to have the integrity to actually help your customers and not just try and make money. And then, then we get into the training, into hiring people, into scaling processes. So it definitely, it's a never ending list of attributes that you have to work on and develop in order to continue growing.
Absolutely. So looking back over the last, oh, it's almost 7 years now. If you had to start all over again, what would you do differently?
If I had to start all over again, I would start with systems and processes.
Okay.
That's the part I slacked on the most. So like I said, the first 2 years were kind of part-time where I lacked the sales skills. The next 2 years, I lacked the processes. And actually, now that I think about it, another one is recurring revenue. So because when you're first starting off in business, you're kind of worried about, today's money. You're not thinking too much about tomorrow's money. You're worried about
Right.
today's money. So you're just, let me get a sale, let me get a sale, let me get a sale. But then after a few years, you're thinking, hey, this isn't sustainable. I can't hire people if we can't predict cash flow. It's hard to hire people. This month we're doing, 15. Next month we're doing 5. So am I going to hire a team this month, fire them next month, right?
Right.
So recurring revenue, I would focus on recurring revenue on day one. I would focus on processes and systems in order to be able to plug people into those. And obviously, the processes and systems are not going to be perfect if you haven't implemented and tried and made mistakes and failed. But just trying to implement some sort of processes and systems and documenting them would help instead of winging everything, right?
Absolutely. Yeah,
So
those
I would
are
focus,
really good points.
yeah. So I would focus on recurring revenue, systems and processes, and hiring people. I would try to get other people on the team as soon as possible rather than me learning sales, me learning web design, which is how I did it. You're going to outgrow yourself at some point or burn yourself out. And the quicker you
Absolutely.
can bring people on, the quicker you're going to learn the lessons of hiring people.
Yep, absolutely. So Nick, as we're wrapping up here, for someone that may be watching this interview series and thinking about going into business for themselves, what's the last bit of advice you have for someone?
Go all in on it and save a little bit of money. I'm not a big believer in do it part-time because when I tried to do it part-time, the growth was too slow, the doubt was too big. So I went full out on it. I went full time. I must have had maybe 2 3 months worth of money, which I needed. Like I made that money stretch. I had
Right.
to. But it was that pressure. It was the pressure of watching that bank account go down and knowing, hey, if I don't get this thing together in 3 months, I have to go back to a job. I don't want to have to do that.
Absolutely.
So I would definitely say it's a if somebody really wants to go in business and if it's really for you, it's the most fulfilling thing ever. Like I don't think I could ever work for somebody again. I'm not saying I wouldn't, maybe, I don't know, but I don't think I would. I'm pretty determined to never work for another company again. I would just start another company, or I think I will always be in business for myself or go into other partnerships with people. So
Absolutely.
it's a very rewarding rewarding life path for sure. Just make sure you have a little bit of money put away and go all in on it, and make sure there's a market match. You know, like certain industries, like music, right? As a musician, you have a very slight chance, right? So you almost have to make sure that whatever type of business you go into, there's a market for it, because if
Absolutely.
there's no market for it, it's just going to make it that much harder. Or if your chances are so slim, you're just making it so much harder for yourself, and it's hard anyways. Like, it's not going to be easy no matter what. So you might as well make sure that your product or your service is in high demand, and that would be a very good starting point.
Some good last minute words of advice, Nick. So thank you so much for your time today, Nick. It was great meeting you and learning more about your entrepreneurial journey. To everyone watching, I look forward to seeing you in our next episode.
Thank you for having me, Barrett. Appreciate it very much. Nice to meet you as
Thank you.
well.